Hello and welcome to episode 1 of On Music and Making. My name is Jeremy, I'm a concert pianist and a writer, and in this series I'm going to be talking to great artists in the world of classical music about their craft, their stories, and how they got to where they are. For the very first episode of this series, I'm so delighted to welcome KaJeng Wong, internationally acclaimed pianist from my home city of Hong Kong. For those of you in Hong Kong who know even just a little bit about classical music, you'll probably have heard of KaJeng. Not only is he a well-known concert pianist, he's also known for curating unique programs with names such as Seasons of Life, Tribute to Death, God Pray Love, and a lot more. KaJeng founded the arts collective Music Lab in 2013 and was also one of the co-founders of a local recording label, Ginger Muse, in 2019. And most recently, he established the Atlas Ensemble, for which he is the creative director and also sometimes conductor as well as performer. In this interview, I asked KaJeng how he came up with these wonderful and very unconventional programs and why it's important to find a way to engage with audience who don't necessarily know a lot about classical music. His experience in arts administration and organization really fed into his creative vision, which he discussed with me during the interview as well. He gave a lot of practical advice on issues that concern the average young aspiring concert pianist. So if you are one yourself, this is surely an interview not to miss. KaJeng was also the subject of a 2009 award-winning documentary, KJ Music and Life, which basically tracked his progress from the age of 11 until the age of 17. I watched this documentary and I was really moved by it. Talking to KaJeng now, almost 2 decades later, I feel that somehow I'm still talking to the same person as I saw on the screen when watching the documentary.
我想做一個 human being，我係想用 music 呢樣嘢去 guide through 我嘅 life。
But the thing which struck me the most when talking to KaJeng was I got the sense that he was someone who was constantly chasing excellence, constantly demanding more of himself, never settling for less, because in his view, classical music demands the very best and the highest quality. And I suppose that's what really inspired me the most. Throughout our conversation, I got the sense that this was someone who has dedicated his whole life to doing the thing that he loved the most, which is classical music. And that in itself is something worth listening to. Thank you, KaJeng, for being here with me today. You've always kind of struck me as a very interesting personality, not just because you're a pianist, but also because you share a lot of your personal thoughts with your audience. You are always, looking for creative ways to present classical music. So I wanted to start off today by just asking you, about these creative programs and how they came to be in the first place. So for me, like all your programs seem to have some sort of narratives, like past programs such as Tribute to Death, God Pray Love, all these things. I just wanted to ask how you came up with such interesting programs and why didn't you go about doing the more conventional recitals?
Well, the first one is called Seasons of Life, and that was actually my graduation recital at Indiana back 13 years ago. And I had this idea that because the piano music is so vast and there's so many topics, so many important topics that the great composers touched on, and perhaps we could connect what we as human being, as individual, wants to share with the music choices that we make to play a concert. There are lots of repertoire that I have learned, but never really put in such a program because it hasn't fit, or in other times. And therefore, for me, each concert, we have to answer one question only, basically, is why does the audience need to offer their time and money to come listen to an individual play a concert? And in order to answer the question, besides playing the music as not just personal, but as let's say as well as we can, I want to share something that can connect with them as themselves as individuals as well. And therefore, the topics we touched on, I touched on, for example, seasons of life, about what we go through in life, the topic of death, of faith, of Christianity. Um, um, there are other ones that I wouldn't talk about now. And then afterwards, I turned 30. Then I recently, since Bach and Mozart, and also the Oriental Ensemble, I turned into my personal discoveries through a project like Endeavor, which is, for example, in the last 3 years, this is the third year I have been going into the music of Schubert. And before it was Bach and Mozart, Oriental Russian Soul, and actually this coming 2 years on the music of Chopin as well. It is something more about personal growth. And like you said, I like to share what I think or what I've been thinking with my audiences in order, not just in order, but I do feel that the audiences grow with me as well through these programs.
So you're saying you're always curating programs with your audience in mind?
Yeah, yeah, because to play music, to learn music, this is a personal thing. But to play a concert, it is not just a personal thing. It is also something that I must put in mind the role of my audience, including the length, the flow of the program, etc.
I have to say it is a lot more appealing to go to a concert feeling like there is some sort of philosophy or narrative behind it than simply going to a concert with like a set menu.
Yes. However, I must make a note here, which is this way of curating a concert is not about gimmick, first thing. And second thing, I do not change one note that I play. The Frank Prelude fugue is 100% the Frank Prelude fugue. The Schumann Fantasy is 100% the Schumann Fantasy. It's just how I program them. I don't change a single note.
And so do you program your concerts according to how you, as in, do you learn your repertoire depending on how you create a program or the other way around?
Yeah, great question, because actually now you remind me that when I decide what I will learn, it is already in the mind of what next program will be. It's usually not separated. You're right. That I learn something is because I know that in 3 years, it will be part of a formal whole program that I want to stage.
So you always think like an artistic director instead of merely just what do I
Just
want
learning
to
a new
learn?
piece? Yes. Because in my bachelor years, I've learned so much repertoire that learning, I understand I've learned how to learn, and I've learned, uh, uh, discovered, how to, learn repertoire. But to prepare for a program is a different thing.
And actually, I want to use this as an excuse to like talk a little bit about Music Lab, which I know that you created or founded when you came back to Hong Kong
Yeah.
in 2013. So
Yeah.
that was really early days, and it's been going on for, well, now 13 years. And you came as a fresh, well, not even like a master's graduate, but as an undergraduate, and then you came and set up this collective. At that point, like, were you trying to do something different, or did you think there was something you could do differently in this industry? Or what prompted you to set up this
I
collective?
think it was out of some kind of youthful enthusiasm of try to experiment different approaches. So I think I was just having some kind of ideas of not knowing how it would turn out, like whatever. I did Season of Life 2013, 2014. I did Tribute to Death. So I was just trying out, and also to learn the capacity of how to run an organization, learning how to promote a certain concert, what does it take to book a venue, to get the concert known in the society, do interviews, the media, the social media side of things, to gather more musicians to play chamber music together, to organize an orchestra, and also later then we ventured into non-classical music as well. So on basically it is a venture to learn how to relate music through an organization with the general public as well. Because there's one thing we must note. The first thing I learned fresh out of music school was if you give a small concert at a music school, you'll realize you will never have to explain what is a Beethoven sonata. You don't even have to explain it. Even if you're a percussionist, you would know what is a Beethoven sonata easily. And you realize the moment you, so to say, promote or put a concert event out, it is not a given that everyone knows what is a Beethoven sonata. And it is a huge difference. Okay, but when I say this, I do not mean lowering the artistic craft or the level or the status of a Beethoven sonata. I simply mean how to connect the two. Like there are definitely general pool who do not know what is a Beethoven sonata. So in some way, I have another point of view is when I put out a concert, let's say, Should Be the Death, God Pray Love, I want to have a thinking which is, I do not care whether the person needs to know what is a Beethoven sonata before they come into my concert. But the way I play, the way I curate, and the whole topic or whatever you call it, will still touch the audience no matter what. Like you don't have to really know the intricacies of Prelude, Chorale, and Fugue by Franck, which is a very difficult piece, in order to feel the serenity or the whatever faith in that program, for example. And still today I remain that thought. Although today I'm a bit different because I am not seen as a youngster anymore. So by my experience, I gained myself credit to do something that's more personal. For example, the concert is only about Schubert. It is about Schubert. I don't have to think whether I must explain a Schubert sonata anymore. It is a Schubert project. It is what it is. Yeah.
But I think even still, this kind of sense of theme has come into your programs because of how you started doing them. Even with Schubert, I think you programmed them as departure, arrival,
Boston, and return. That's interesting because the one I just told you, Seasons of Life, by itself, it is departure, loss, and return, which I think rhymed with Schubert's life anyway, with his music, really. So I call this Seasons of Schubert, departure, lost, return. Some people used to think, was I trying to just kind of like create some sort of gimmick or these kind of things with the music I play? But I'm grateful and proud of myself that through time and through actual work, I have proven that it's about the music.
And about in music school is how to present the music like not just to go on stage and play it, but to actually present it, as you said, to people who are not as knowledgeable or don't know what a Beethoven sonata is. Yes. And I think that sometimes the fault of music school is that they don't really promote this kind of this is something you have to gain through real life experience. But I was recently watching your documentary again, and I was just struck by how even when you were like 15 or 17, you were already very much directing or leading a group of people towards music that you love. Would you say that this strand of wanting to share music not just by playing, but also by actually sharing, connecting with people, would you say that that's something that's always been inherent in you?
Yeah, I don't think much has changed. I must say, recently I conducted, actually our ensemble, Atlas Ensemble, has conducted so far 6 Mozart concerto, and we'll do more in the coming months. I was actually the feeling the way we approach rehearsing a piece is actually almost the same as I did when I was 20 years ago at high school. Except now, of course, I hope I'm a bit more knowledgeable, a bit more mature, and a bit more efficient. That's the only difference. And yeah, the attitude must be the same. The strive for professional quality must be the same as well.
And can you tell me a little bit about the Atlas Ensemble, actually? What is
Oh, it's
it
actually very
something that, yeah.
simple. In New York, there's the office chamber. In UK, there's the English chamber orchestra. It's basically the same. It's just like around 26 to 30 people for Mozart concerto, maybe a bit more for Beethoven. I'm the leader around the place, and I must say I have no interest in becoming a real conductor, but I'm extremely interested in conducting concertos for myself and for others. For example, where I just worked with Colleen Lee, very established, very famous, extremely good pianist from Hong Kong, and she told me after rehearsal that it really makes a difference to play with a conductor who knows the piano, and I'm extremely proud of that. And because I really know the concerto and the orchestra part very well. I know what the soloist needs. I know how to mix the strings or the woodwinds or the brass even more accommodating to make music alive together. It doesn't feel like just a gig, it's kind of like a first half piece before the symphony in the second half. I don't want to be like that. It's just that, basically.
When did this interest in conducting or conducting at the piano come?
Well, when I was in high school, I played in orchestra for 6 years, if not more. And I was honestly quite good on the violin. I was always the concertmaster. Also played so much chamber music and string quartets and piano quartets. So it came naturally that I like to involve, and I do like to share the energy of music with people. And yeah, yeah. And I learned a lot conducting the concertos with the soloists as well. I did learn a lot. How to make the structure, how to make the balance, how to make it work really, and not just put it together. What I don't want is I don't want to just put it together. I want to make something happen.
Is this something that you've been kind of thinking about more and more, like this conducting at the piano, or doing more?
Actually, I must say I don't really think about it,
Okay.
because the organization is so much more difficult than to organize it. It's so much more difficult than to conduct it. That's for sure. To conduct it is the easiest part. To organize it is the difficult part.
Yes, and you've always been good at getting people to come together
Well,
to play music.
I, to organize it is another matter. That all I can say.
What's coming next for you in terms of projects or a kind of direction?
Well, I did the Mozart last Thursday. On this Saturday, I have to play my first ever recital of only Chopin's music in Nanjing. 然后 then I have to play with Peter Wisberly, a cellist from the Netherlands, a chamber concert, and I will have a chamber concert of Chopin's cello work as well. And also later in April, we're doing all 5 Beethoven concertos with veteran pianists from Hong Kong and also our ensemble. And then I have to play the Schubert Trio, which is extremely difficult. And then we go on a Guangzhou and Shenzhen for more Mozart concertos. And then I have to play tribute to death, because my grandmother passed away last year. And in her 1 year, I'm going to play the tribute. I've always thought about it, that when someone important in my family died, I'll do this recital finally.
Oh, I see. Okay. Wow. So
And at the end of the year, I have to play 960, the third of the Schubert project, as well as impromptus 935 and Klavierstück 946. And part of 10 pianists, 32 Beethoven sonatas project, I will have to play Hammerklavier and also the first piano sonata on Beethoven's birthday this so this December.
Okay, so it seems like your schedule's pretty full with great works from great
You
masters.
know, I'm 36 this year. I mean, I guess on the outside it does feel like a lot. To me, it just feels like a lot of things I've prepared in my life finally just some opportunities to actualize them. I think life is about actualization.
Can you speak more on that?
When we go into music school and a music degree, we think, oh, what is our life about? We learn the music. And if you look forward in our career, about not just career, but life, and I got to answer the question what a career is about. A career is about actualizing a person's potential or thoughts or dreams. What it means is basically life is about you have learned blah 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 certain amount of things, have certain ability, regardless of whether your purpose is to, so to say, contribute to the society. I think it's under a person's instinct to do things that it's meaningful to you. Some is more relating to others, some is more relating to some kind of purpose, let's say in art, artistic purposes. Some is just for the self. Some is very personal. And therefore, I think, to me, all arts projects is about actualizing a sort of like an instinct or desire to share certain music. For example, I want to play the Emperor Concerto or the 960. Nobody points a gun in my head to say you have to play 960. I want to do it because I feel like it is a time of my life that I should. And I think this is what an artistic life is about. And to be honest,
Yeah.
if nobody comes at all to listen to me, I'll still do it. And also, you can even argue that with today's technology, you don't even have to play in concert. You can just record it, and it's meaningful enough to you. And that's what I meant by actualization. I think first we should talk about self-actualization. Second, we talk about career.
And do you feel like you have this actualization, it comes in different forms at different times of your career?
Yes. For example, Music Lab, in its first few years, I actually did a lot of charity work. I went to a lot of university to give sharings, some kind of different projects, really just charity purposes. And that phase has passed, and now I do sort of this kind of charity work in a different form of manner. There was also a phase that I put down this role as a director, so to say, and I just went into extremely focused competing, because competing is also about self-learning and growth. Without achieving a higher craft on the instrument, actually there's limitation to what you can do. And I think as classical musicians, we should be very clear on that. Because there is no classical musician who can scam his or her way out. You have to actually play it. And I think that remains as the most important thing.
So what you're basically saying is that we must always have a purpose before we can do anything. And I think that kind of in a way relates to what you said in your documentary many years ago, that you wanted to be a human being first before being a musician.
Well, I'm glad whatever happened before the documentary or after the documentary, I don't think I really changed. This purpose is exactly the same, and that's something I'm proud of.
At what point did you know you wanted to be a pianist?
Actually, very late. After back then, it was not the DSE exam; it was the HKCEE exam at Form 5 at Hong Kong school, secondary school. And only afterwards, I was kind of like, oh, maybe I should study music. That's actually how. And I applied at Indiana because it's the cheapest school in the States, literally the lowest tuition in 2007, 2008. Yeah, and also because before me, for example, when I entered as Form 1, the 5 forms above me, I don't know anyone who studied music, especially in piano, like literally none. And I couldn't say I'm the cause, but I do think my existence and also the documentary kind of put, and also the Fenghei, the atmosphere at DBS, kind of steered a lot of people towards studying music. If you name after me, like each form, so many of them then study music. Before me, none.
Yeah, I would say so because I definitely I think I was at DBS few years after you, but
Mm.
I definitely could feel
There's
your
a trend.
your cult of personality still pervaded in the
Really?
music department for
Oh,
sure. I
that's
mean, it
terrible.
was headed by Samuel Pang, so
Mr. Pang.
who was
Yeah,
of course heavily influenced by you.
I
Um,
don't know.
and I would say that
I cannot say that it's a good thing, but it was what it was.
yeah, and yeah, I mean it was this strive for it. I mean, I did fall in love with music also at DBS, but I
Yeah,
went
this is
about it
great
in a
place.
different way too.
Yeah, great place. Well, we could say, and maybe it's a different topic than today. I don't know, but we got to say is to one thing is to become a classical musician. Another thing is to, I shouldn't say the word survive, but sustain as well, because we must admit that like being a classical musician is not just like saying, "Oh, I graduated from a school and therefore I'm a classical musician." You also have to kind of work like or as a classical musician, and the application of classical music is basically 3 things. First, to perform, which includes solo and collaborative, alone and or with others. Second thing, to teach, obviously. The third thing, actually, 4 things. The third thing, music related administrative things. The fourth things, music related business kind of things. Like some people sell instruments, for example, or whatever. The fifth thing, do something else. And this categorization is quite important because without understanding how we actually make a certain sustainable return or income, in short, how can you say that you are a classical musician? Right. And one must be very clear and must be very honest about it. Why have I just mentioned this? It's because now more people study music, but then what? What do they do after they to study is the easy part. To get into music school is the easy part. To still practice or work or whatever as a musician, that's the difficult part. And maybe that's partly why I started Music Lab. I want to forge a pathway that we can actually engage ourselves continuously as a classical musician. Because or else the industry will kind of like, stay in the same way. But of course, there are people who are studying much better than I do. For example, into the I don't know forms of AI productions, pop music, whatever. Yeah, but I'm just talking about classical music because I can't really do music outside of classical music. I must admit.
Do you think people kind of look at the top competition winners and think, oh, there's a model of how a career could be made, and then just come out to realize that actually it's not, only like 0.001% of music students
Well,
actually make it like that?
competitions. First of all, who wouldn't want to be the winner of extremely big competitions? Not saying that everyone wants to be a star, and not saying that to play music is to be a competition winner. But we have to admit that the training and also the field of classical music is highly competitive because we play the same music. For example, I have never known any jazz musician who wanted to prove themselves as the best by winning a jazz international competition. There is, by the way, there are jazz international, but the jazz musician wouldn't care about it at all. So it is unfortunately by the nature of the classical music, it is in the form of competitions. And as if only the winners deserve certain chance. And we cannot deny that competitions are often on a very, very high level. The other thing is the industry. For example, if I tell you that even by not winning a competition, you can be a soloist, plus the industry, the market model of this thing, classical music, you can earn quite a lot of money. Then you don't really have to win a competition as well. But because our industry is so narrow, that the ones who can perform is so limited, and also even the teaching market is arguably not that good, not that vibrant, then you realize it's because we have no jobs. At the end of the day, it's about the pool of money that we can share. Not money, resources. Resources also in terms of stages. If one wins the leads competition, then of course automatically the winner has more performing opportunities than one who has not. At least 99% of them, right? So we cannot say that competition is not important. We cannot say that competition is not one of the biggest and fastest way to make a career. But I think on a grander scale, music making is not about competition. One may win blah blah competitions, but one way may not be the most outstanding, let's say, pianist of the generation either. If one thinks so, then one is an idiot. It's just part of the game of the industry of classical music that involves resources, connections, stature, status, and stages. But I'm not saying that I did not say, and I will not say that in competition we don't have great art. There are great art in competitions, but we cannot say that. And I say that as a competition winner, by the way. I've won competitions. I'm saying that if we judge an artist's value just by the competition, very narrow-minded. Another point of view, by the way, one more point of view, is if a youngster, they practice since they were 10 until they were, I don't know, 23, and then you win quite a competition. Like, so let's say you win Leeds or either Dublin or Busoni. Quite often I've seen their own personal artistic surge kind of plateau at the height of the competition. Because there are then quite a lot of opportunities comes your way, and you play old pieces, and pretty much that's it. Good enough left for at least winning a whatever competition, right? But I have seen in myself that I am surprised actually by myself, and of course some of my colleagues, that after winning some of my competitions in 2018, 2019, and then I went to some more in Rubinstein, Liszt, Utrecht, I didn't win. And afterward, I continued to play more and different and new repertoire. And I would say now I'm like, I don't know how many times better than I was before. But I missed certain age, limit to enter certain competition. So what? I may die tomorrow. Do I care? No. I think the worst thing a young pianist can do is to set your artistic lifespan at the deadline or deadline age of the competition game. Then I'm sorry, then I can tell you, you're not really striving to be a pianist artist. You're merely wanting to catch the train to become a competition winner. And if that's the case, good luck to you. And I hope you win and have your opportunities. But that's quite sad. And honestly, I have doubt whether I'm so interested in your music making because the intent is different. If your intent is regardless, you still search forward, then I'm curious what you'll become in 5 years. Especially when you have undergo all the ups and downs of rejections, acceptance, glory, failure. You know, those experiences grow you further. And truly, it is true especially in the world of music, because music is not just about excellence on 2 weeks of of stages in a certain city. So what? You play the best, and what? 留名青青史, you're written in the history books and you're the best ever. I don't believe that. Now, you don't believe that. Nobody believes that.
What you said resonates a lot with me, because I also came to the piano, or decided to become a pianist, at a very, many would consider quite a late age. And yet I think there's something so interesting about that, because then it means we mostly power on our own will rather than perhaps parents' obligations or things like that. And so I think we also discover what it means to play the piano or to become a pianist in a different way. Did you find it harder, would you say, in order to motivate yourself? Having a late start, did you ever think that you won't so-called make it?
I'm someone who either I haven't figured out whether I have chosen it, but once I chose it, I don't allow myself failure. And therefore, I've always advised my younger friends, if they want to study music, there's no chance but to be at your absolute best. The reason is because other people are being at their best. If you're not at your best, how can you even stand a chance? If you want to be considered as one of the outstanding ones. And therefore, actually, it was right after the documentary in 2008. In my bachelor, I was completely immersed in my learning and preparation to become a professional pianist, so to say. My natural talent is quite high, but before I was 16, 17, I was not heavily trained. There were colleagues of mine who were heavily trained. In China, in Hong Kong, definitely heavily trained. And I was extremely talented, but not heavily trained. But maybe that's a good thing. If I were heavily trained before I was 16, maybe I would be easily conformed into a certain way only then. But finding your own learning approach is quite difficult. It takes luck and many things, like technical approach, musical, intellectual, too many things. It's difficult. Right.
Who would you say inspired you the most on your journey?
I always have this saying that my first piano teacher, Nancy Liu, taught me how to feel music, how music feels. My second piano teacher, Mr. Gabriel Kwok, taught me how to play the piano. How playing the piano actually works. My third piano teacher, Professor Emil Naumov in Indiana, taught me how music thinks. And then later, Julia Mustonen from Sweden raised my professional level. And then Mr. O'Hora from Guildhall shared always with me different thinking as an artist, which I appreciated as well. And also there was a final mentor that I met in Amsterdam, Norm Grubert. And I would say he's one of the rarest mentor that I've met. I wish I lived closer to him so I can play for him every month. I think he's a treasure.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about your documentary. I see, of course, it captured only a very small moment of your life, but it's a very rare thing to have like a moment frozen in your life, kind of frozen in time. How do you see your younger self? Do you think you've mostly remained the same?
my younger self or
The self
document-
in your documentary, in the documentary.
in the documentary? Actually, I don't have much, except I watched it once without sound because I cannot stand the sound of my voice. I find it very funny. I think he's a very funny kid. Um, Obviously with his own character and things. But I must say, if you don't ask me about it, I don't really think about it. I really actually never ask myself the question how I see upon him or not. For me, it's just I lived my life as a kid, and it was filmed several times and made into a document, and that's it. I don't go into any intellectual discourse into what this kid was thinking, whether he was right, whether he has a point. Honestly, I cannot be any less interested because I'm only interested in what I should practice tomorrow.
But would you say people see you differently with the documentary being published?
And how can I not? If the documentary is not me, I would perhaps have different certain assumptions, or you can say prejudice. But it is part of human nature to have that, and it's okay. But I got to say as well, for longer than I remember, my audiences who come weekly, monthly to my productions, actually, none of them, not even one, ever asked me anything about, let's say, what happened in documentary or the thoughts. Then none of them asked me anything about it because I think any of those questions is now much better answered in what I do already. And isn't that the much greater answer to any discovery of certain, fragmented thoughts shared in the documentary?
Speaking of new audience, in recent years, especially after COVID, you've kind of traveled more to mainland China and to Taiwan and perhaps South Korea. So your audience base has grown, or you've visited more places. How do you feel about the audience there in general compared to maybe Europe, which you have lived in for a few years?
One may say it's younger. They are very eager, very curious. And you know what? I've learned one thing. Sometimes you go to a very small city and you thought maybe these people don't know. And actually, they know. There was once I was in Jinan. I've never been there. Terrible hall. The piano was entirely out of tune. An A is not an A. An A is literally. And they did not even arrange a tuner. It was a Steinway D, however. And I played the most the most serious concert program ever. Winterreise List 664 by Schubert, and then 959 by Schubert. It cannot be more unfriendly than the program. And then from the first note to the last note, it was entirely silence. Total silence. And I learned that the quality of the performance do not depend on the quality of the piano, or nor the hall, nor the assumption of the audience. And they told me afterwards, wow, they felt, wow, they appreciated that I was a serious musician, that I was into the core and depth of music. I think that's something humbling. Like, why do we assume that certain audience must be maybe, let's say, worse or not as cultured, not as educated, and the thing you play that they don't understand? I think I have learned to basically do not care about this as well. If the program is the Hammerklavier Sonata, then Hammerklavier Sonata, so be it. If I can that day, then I should play with the same integrity and intensity, if I can. But also there's another thing I learned is sometimes I cannot. And that, I think that's because of the mental and physical capacity. that when you're overworked, when you're too busy, too exhausted, sometimes you cannot give as much.
So that's quite optimistic about the audience culture in Asia then. What about the education? Do you find it's it's known for being very competitive? Do you think that's a good thing?
First of all, still there are a lot of youngsters who wants to learn the piano seriously. And because of that, I mean, look at a lot of music schools in Europe, in the States, in the UK. Quite a majority of them are from China. And they're from China not because certain class of population have certain money to afford the tuition. It's not because of that. It's because that the proportion by population and also by level, it is high in Asia. So good thing about being competitive is that the level is high. And that cannot be a bad thing. There may be a time in 10 years, in 20 years, where there will be even less people learning music. If when by that time comes, then we should complain about the actual depth of classical music learning because the level has dropped.
That's true. But wouldn't you say that being too competitive sometimes takes the joy out of music?
Then it depends on the music industry. If the music industry is healthy and actually about sharing music, then whether they feel the pressure or whether there will be only a few winners will not matter as much. But if nobody can really become a relatively successful performer, for example, let's say I'm one of the pioneers of my generation, which actually I am, I must say. If I do not try to perform, to actualize our collective dream of playing music, then what can other people do? Right? And therefore, I created these projects not only for myself, actually for more people. Because if not, then why are we studying music? Then maybe we should be honest, is that we study music to know that we can't really perform. So we study music to become a classical musician who only teach. I'm not saying that we cannot study music to become a classical musician, but we study a classical musician to perform and teach or only teach, right? But perform, how to perform, stage, resources, audiences, promotion, content, curations, right? And also social building, audience building. So if that does not exist, then we only compete to be at the very top, and then we don't perform. It doesn't make sense to me.
So what would you say to someone who is aspiring to be a concert pianist?
Be realistic and be at your very best. And be so driven for the right reason. And to always search it deeper. I think when one ages, when a flashy career, as one ages, no matter what kind of start or non-start you have, for example, I didn't have any start. In my 20s, not one presenter ever hired me for one recital in my entire 20s. So when opportunities do not go your way, or when it goes your way, it's the exact same thing. If you do not have the absolute immersion and focus and intent on the right reason, at some point you will be out. You're going to crash. It may be competition rejection. It may be mafia politics. It may be you moving home to a new country. It may be graduation itself. It may be peer pressure. It may be the fact that you don't have any more money. After you're 32, you realize you have to, I don't know, go into stock market or something. Or you you realize you can only become a professor after you got a doctorate degree, and after you got a degree, you realize that you still won't never become a professor, and then you realize all your options are gone. Whatever reason that comes, whatever happens, if you don't have the right reason and the right focus, you're gonna be out. First thing. However, one must be also very clear. Not everyone is equipped to be a performer. Mentally, physically, let's say the professional craft level to become a pianist is extremely high. And also that's something you learn once you really go out and play in Hong Kong, at my home, or outside my home, let's say anywhere in, let's say in Asia. People really compare you with the best. They pay 10 quid, 20 quids for your concert. They compare you with Stephen Hoff. They compare you with Lang Lang. They compare you with Horowitz. They compare you with, I don't know, Song Jinshu. They really do. And therefore, because of this, it is not for everyone. But you ask me the question, you ask me the question, if someone is aspiring to be a concert pianist, then I must tell you, mentally, physically, intent, everything, it has to be really, really right. And I think it is also a professor or a mentor's role to teach these kind of thinking as well.
So interesting. Anyways, thank you so much, KaJeng, for talking to me today. Thank you so much for your interesting thoughts.
Pleasure.
If you've enjoyed this interview, please subscribe and stay tuned for more.